Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Schofield Ministries bi-weekly online service. My name is Bobby Hayes, and though typically we'd be finishing up the book of Colossians at this time, I want to take this session to celebrate, to observe, to read about mothers, wives, women in general. Today is Mother's Day. We celebrate our mothers for all that they've given us, what they've done for us throughout our lives, and probably what they're still doing for us today if your mother is still around. I am still blessed to have mine. We're going to read, it's a very familiar passage. We're not going to read all the verses from it. We're going to read several of them. I'd like you to take and turn over to Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31 is the longest section concerning mothers and wives. It is a template for any young man. This is the wife you want to look for. This is the woman you want to look for. If you see these qualities, then pursue. If you don't see these qualities, either turn to someone else or pursue with caution because you've been warned. This is also a template for young ladies. This is your goal in life. This is how you should behave in life. This is what you should embody. Who is your example? Your father should be. What I'm about to read here, this is the way a father should be towards your mother. He should be the example of what this talks about. Many times in Proverbs, turn over to Proverbs 14:1. Before we start with 31, turn over to Proverbs 14:1. Sometimes Proverbs, people complain about Proverbs getting women sort of the short end of the stick. That's not the case. It does. Proverbs was written in quite a bit towards men, young men, boys. Why? Because they're the most hard-headed. They're the ones you've got to pound. That's why the Bible is written so much, I guess you could say, towards men. Because men, on the whole, typically, not exclusively, but typically, you got to take a hammer upside their heads to get something through to them, to get through their hard-headedness. And that's what the scriptures are doing. Proverbs 14:1. The wise woman builds her house, but the foolish tears it down with her own hands. Yeah, it does say it gives the negative and it gives the positive also. Proverbs 31 is the positive. This is what you want to emulate. So let's go over to Proverbs 31 and start with verse 1. Proverbs 31:1, the words of King Lemuel, the oracle which his mother taught him. Now, King Lemuel, the name means belonging to God. Some say this was Solomon. Maybe that was sort of a pet name that was given to him by his mother, Bathsheba, because you notice these are oracles that his mother taught him. These are things that a woman taught her son. A mom taught her son. Now, who Lemuel is, we don't know. Some think they know who he is. No, we don't know. It could be Solomon. It may not be Solomon. It could be some other prince. We don't know. But the thing is, here it is not the words of Lemuel. These are the words of his mother. Motherly advice. Now I want us to go ahead and skip down to verse 10. Verses 10 through 31 is the one thing says the capable wife. I think it's a lot more than just a capable wife. This is the wife you should be looking for. Verse 10, an excellent wife. And if you want to go on with the way this whole passage goes, an excellent mother. Who can find? For her worth is above jewels. This passage will give us the perfect balance between family and between work for the woman. She is excellent. Now this word excellent is in the context of military accomplishments, a person of valor. She's a heroic individual who exercises skill. It's blended with a character. This woman is capable of practical competence, physical strength, financial wealth. She is the total package. She is everything you should be looking for in a woman. Now, we're first going to go over these all these attributes, accomplishments, what they should look for. But at the end, we're going to find out where they all come from. She is too often, she is the total package. Too often, the requirements for a wife are accomplishments rather than internal godly worth. But this passage, you're going to see the outside and we're going to see the inside. Like I said, total package. This is everything. Who can find? Now, if you look at it, you may think, well, obviously this person doesn't exist. No, the writer is not suggesting that it's impossible to find this kind of woman, but that she is scarce. There's not many around. And this is a search. You just don't jump at the first woman that comes into your life. Does she emulate this template? Does she emulate these characteristics? A man needs to seek God in order to find her. Is she desired? Is she searched for? Is this what you're looking for? Towards the end, we're going to talk about physical beauty and how nothing's wrong with physical beauty, but that should never be your first goal when looking for a wife. Her worth. This does not mean she is to be bought, traded. Feminists have written that. Look at this. This is talking about selling women. No, this is not talking about selling women. This is not putting down motherhood. This is not putting down being a wife. Men and children must give appreciation. And the only way you can give appreciation is if you think something's worth something. Her worth. This does not mean she is to be bought, traded, sold, but is only a way of showing her value or worth to the husband who finds her, to the man who finds her. Her worth is far above. Why? Because she uses everything she has. She's not just using her beauty, her feminine charms, her feminine wiles. I think that's what it was in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. She is using everything she has for her husband and for her children. She is far above jewels, any jewel of great price, any treasure of comparable worth is zilch compared to her. A bucket full of gold is worth nothing compared to an excellent wife, to an excellent mother. Verse 11, the heart of the husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. Now I've got a little note here. The heart of the husband, and if you want to put a little arrow between husband and trust, you should put the word should. The heart of the husband should trust in her. A lot of husbands don't trust in their wives, and they should. That's one of the things you young men should look for. Is this a woman I can trust in? Can I trust her words? Can I trust her actions? The word trust there means to be fully secure. You have no doubts. You give positive remarks. You show her, you let her know how important she is to you. It is rare in Scripture that we are told to trust anyone except God. And you notice it never talks about the wives trusting their husbands. That seems to be kind of innate. It's husbands, trust your wives. Like I said, why? Because we got to be hit over the head several times before we finally get it. The heart of her husband. The husband's well-being falls on his wife's reliability. The husband trusts in her in every area of his life. He will need nothing else. He will not seek anything else. No other woman, no fame, no riches, because he's got the greatest riches right there beside him. And he will have no lack of gain. The husband will have full confidence in her. She contributes to his well-being, the family's well-being, rather than detracts from the home setting. The husband doesn't look for other ways to make up losses. One of the movie theaters I worked at, this one guy married this girl, and a lot of people warned him not to marry her. Well, not long after that, I'd say within the next 3 or 4 months, he was fired. And we found out he was stealing from the company. Why? Because his salary, and trust me, a theater manager's salary is not that great, couldn't keep up with her demands. So he had to start stealing money in order to get her what she desired. that's that's not an excellent wife. That is not a husband trusting, being able to trust his wife because she just wants more and more and more and more. Young men, that's not what you're to look for. Young women, that's not what you're to go for. As a woman of worth, she brings worth to their relationship and their home. She, verse 12, she does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She gives herself to him. She doesn't need anyone or anything else but her husband. She gives him good. The word itself means plunder, booty of a victorious army. She gives him nothing but good things, beneficial things, things to bring him up. Men have a hard time with self-esteem. If they're not wealthy, if they're not popular, what is wrong? And she's there to remind him of who he is. She does him good and not evil, not hurtful, not harmful things. Not like the friend of mine. What a horrible husband. You can't even get me this. You get me this and you'll be a better husband. All the days. This is where her days are committed to. Her trustworthiness is not temporary. It's not, I'm just going to do this while he's a good guy. No, she does this all the days of her life. This is an element of her character. She is naturally disposed to trust him. And he should trust her. Of her life. Women are the helpmeets. Men are lousy, okay? I'm sorry, that's just, we need the influence of men. We need the taming influence of men. Very few men don't need this. They are wild. They need to be tamed by women. You think about it, who's typically in history killing each other? It's men going out there, killing and killing and killing. They need the taming, calming influence of women. We are lacking. Think about it. In Genesis, God makes a helpmate for Adam. It's not Eve needs a helpmate, but Adam does. Something's missing in his life. We men have something missing in our lives, and we need women to fill that gap. Men are sinful. Men are rats. That's just the way it is. This is why, as I said before, the Bible is pointed towards men. We need to lead our wives. We need to lead our children because we know we can trust our wives. Because we know the heart of our children, if we train them up right, is towards their moms, their dads. Verse 13, and verses 13 and 14, we are just going to read it, maybe a little bit of a comment, but that's all. She looks for wool and flax, and works with her hands in delight. She is like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She's not lazy. She works hard in this family. She works hard for her family, for what her family needs. Like a merchant ship, she's reliable. She's reliable bringing this into the household. She brings her food from afar. She will get her food. She will feed her family. She will make sure her family is fed no matter what it takes. Now verse 15. She rises also while it is still night, gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. She's industrious. She relishes her home life. She works in and manages her household. She, the virtuous woman, the good wife, shows herself to be capable, astute in business, as well as effective and efficient in taking care of her home and family. She rises. Her daily schedule would appear to be a demanding one. She's not just lazing around the home, not doing anything. Each year, I think there's a study done on, if a housewife was paid for all the work she does in the house, outside of the house. And I didn't even think to look it up. But I think the last time I looked it up, the average was like $80,000 or $90,000 a year because all that she does. She should work hard. Every man appreciates the meals, the clean house. The problem with men is we don't say it enough. Men are really bad to make bitter remarks towards their wives. Maybe they've had a bad day at work. Maybe the kids are being too loud and they take it out on her. That is wrong. Wrong, wrong, wrong. While it is still night, she rises early in the morning. She is active and productive. Her work is never done. And I think this also gives an indication she's on duty 24/7. Whenever she's needed, she is there. She is doing her job. This mother, this wife, is there for her whole household. The image also suggests a lioness for hunting for food at night. Um, Many don't know this, but it's not the lions that go out and hunt, or at least not very seldom, only if they don't have a lioness. Usually it's the lioness that hunts, and she brings the hunt home to the lion. The capable woman puts the needs of her family members and ahead of her own comfort, ahead of her own needs, and gives food. She is not pampered. She keeps an accounting on the food to make sure there is enough for everyone and that they are well stocked. And she gives it to her household. The woman is really in charge of her household. This would also include her children. Part of her day's work included preparing and providing food for her family. Portions. This word in the Hebrew means a rule, a decree, something prescribed or appointed. As the senior woman of the household, she was responsible for the management of the female servants, giving them tasks for them to perform during their day. She was responsible for the children, making sure their lessons or whatever is needed for the children are done. Gives portions to her maidens, young servant girls. The wife is being an example on how they should act when the day comes that they are married. So the mother is not just an example to her children. She's also an example to these young servant girls that they have. She is not to be snobby towards them. She is not to treat them as lower class citizens. She is to be an example to them of what it means to be a mother, what it means to be a wife. Verse 16, she considers a field and buys it. From her earnings, she plants a vineyard. The woman ventures into the world of business. She considers, she evaluates. Now, where did she learn this from? How did she know what was a good, how does she know, how do you evaluate this field? I think her father taught her, or maybe her mother taught her. And her mother taught her, and her mother taught her on how to do this. She considers, she evaluates a field. She has a business, but first, her home comes first. She's not just sitting around, family first. She apparently knows how to evaluate the potential of a real estate transaction. And this transaction is not, I'm going to invest in this property and then 5 years later we're going to sell it. Or we're not going to buy this, flip this house, and then we'll sell it. This is a vineyard. She's growing. She buys it. She devises a plan to purchase it. Has a purpose in mind for its use. From her earnings, the earnings from the business transaction. She plants. Okay, that's pretty simple. She's going to grow something. And what does she grow? A vineyard. This might have been on the ground she purchased, seeing how fertile the land was, and maybe she had been taught by her mother. Many of them had their own small gardens that helped supplement the food. All of this was unusual for the woman of the household because women were not given this latitude of judgment. So this is a verse mainly for husbands. Husbands, look at this. This is what she's supposed to be doing. And if you're buying into the culture, which says, she shouldn't step foot out of that house, you're not in God's will. God says, let her do this. There's a reason she should do this. That she was permitted to do so is a testimony to the confidence of her husband, the trust of her husband in her ability, her intelligence, and her vision to act wisely and acutely. One of the ways a man can praise his wife at this time period. You go out, you buy it. Now she's going to keep up with the rest of her responsibilities also. She's not going to put all of her attention on this vineyard. Verse 17, she girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. Action. Productive purposes. This is not to be taken literally. She's not going out to some gym and pumping iron. She girds herself. This is often a reference to the preparations a soldier makes to protect himself for a battle. Kind of the waistband that he puts around to hold the armor in place. That way it makes it harder for enemy soldiers to cut into him. She girds herself with strength. She is physically capable of handling the work she undertakes and mentally tough enough to deal with the challenges that would come. This would be kind of revolutionary for this time period. So she has to be strong with this. The husband has to be strong too. The husband has to be a little open-minded. Makes her arms strong. Not just one arm, but both arms. Her whole body has to be involved in this. Verse 18, she senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. Senses actually means taste here, but it's not meant to be taken figuratively. It means she is wise. She is experienced enough to see, maybe with this vineyard, oh, this is good growth this year. We got to cultivate this. We got to produce this. Or maybe whenever she sees, okay, this is not good this year. Furrow it under, fertilize the soil, and let's get ready for next year. She senses that her gain, her profits are good. Quality of merchandise, its profitability. She is a woman that is pleased with her work and sees the potential for profit. This profit is going to be used, it appears, for something else, not for her gain, not to put aside in some savings account just in case. Her lamp. Some say this is a reference to long life, but no, the content does not bear this out. The lamp is more to a reference to the work that she does, her industrious nature as she continued to work into the night. Her vineyard, her household. It does not go out at night. She works late into the night to maintain the productivity levels required to meet the demands of her household and her business. Her wisdom teaches her to make sure she has enough oil. That's why her lamp doesn't go out. That's why it figuratively doesn't go out. She has enough oil. She has everything she needs to do what her job or her duties require. That's why wisdom comes in. And her husband trusts her. If she needs something, he trusts her enough to know, doesn't question, says, okay, if this is what you need. Verse 19. She stretches out her hand to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. Her skill set seems to be equal to her diligence. She stretches out her hand. This appears to refer to the spinning process for producing thread that would be woven into cloth. And it says her hands, her hands. Both hands are needed. You just can't do it one-handed. Distaff, this is the stick or spindle, a straight rod onto which the wool or flax is wound for spinning. And think about it, back whenever we read in verse 13, she looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. What she's doing here, she's happy with it. She likes what she's doing. Clothing for the family, possibly clothing for the poor, as we're going to read in the next verse. I mean, look at this. Okay, she's got her business. She's got her vineyard. She's taking care of her household, her servants, taking care of her children, taking care of her husband. Now she's making clothes for them. This woman doesn't have any time to lazy around on the couch and just do nothing. She's working. She's industrious. Her hands. Turn over to Genesis 18, 6 through 8. Genesis 18, 6 through 8. So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, "Quickly, prepare 3 measures of fine flour, knead it, and make bread cakes." Abraham also ran to the herd and took a tender and choice calf and gave it to the servant, and he hurried to prepare it. And he took curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared and placed it before them, and was standing by the tree. Excuse me. There'll probably be another one come here pretty soon. And he took curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared, placed it before them, and he was standing by them under the tree as they ate. Sarah was a woman of high social rank. She was a very privileged, wealthy woman, but she was not above menial labor. Prepare 3 measures of fine flour, make bread cakes. Go over to Genesis 24. Genesis 24, 18 through 20. This is Rebecca. And she said, and this is talking to Abraham's servant, and she said, "Drink, my lord." And she quickly lowered her jar to her hand and gave him a drink. Now when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, "I will also draw for your camels until they have finished drinking." So she quickly emptied her jar. Now camels can drink a lot. This was hard labor. This was not like putting the water in your bowl for your dog or your cat. This was drawing many jars of water from the well and pouring it out. Camels stored water, so they would drink lots of water. "I will also draw for your camels until they have finished drinking." So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough, ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. All his camels. This was a woman of high social rank. This was a woman of wealth. But she did not think it above her status to do menial labor. Turn over to Genesis 29, 9 and 10. Rachel. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. And it came about that when Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Jacob went up and rolled the stone from the mouth of the well and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Rachel was a woman of high social rank. Rachel was a woman of wealth, but here she is being a shepherdess. Many cultures, that was one of the lowest things you could think to be, and eventually in Israel itself. Being a shepherd, you were on the bottom strata. She was not above menial labor. She and Rebecca and Sarah, in this respect, were a great example of the excellent wife. And her hands grasped the spindle. The spindle is that which makes the wool. Verse 20. She extends her hand to the poor, and she stretches out her hands to the needy. Her commitment to the community, not just to her family, she finds time to take care of the community. She has a compassionate spirit. She extends. She is charitable. She is much more than just a skillful manager of her household. She is much more than just a homemaker. This is the way God made women. The man is not to neglect these things either. It is to take special care of those who are in need. Women typically think of the smaller details. Men are prone to overlook them. She extends her hand. Possibly the clothing we were just talking about, the wool, the spindle, and all that. Maybe that's what she was doing. She was giving clothes out that she had just made. She stretches out her hands to the needy. She does more than just throw money at them. Today, that seems to be the simple solution. Just throw money and it'll take care of all the problems. No. She gives them what they need at that time. Women's ears, they're attuned to a baby's cry. Men's ears are not attuned to that. She hears the little details. She thinks of the little things that they may need. Oh, winter's coming up. I saw many of them don't have coats. They don't have gloves. They don't have blankets. Let's get to work. Look at this woman. So far, we've seen someone who is responsible, whole household, her husband, her children, her young maidens. Now she's taking on the community. She is creative, thinking of ways to help. She is industrious. It's still night, and she's getting up and working. Astute. She is wise. She's not wasting the limited resources that she has. She's using them. She is devoted to her husband, to her children, to her household, to her community. She is kind. Now, you're expected to be good to your spouse. You're expected to be good to your children. But in this case, she's being exemplary to everyone, even those that are in the community that have less than what she has. She is giving to them. Verses 21 through 24, we're just going to read. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all of her household are clothed with scarlet. I've read a lot of commentaries on that, and they're not really for sure what that means. Possibility, because snow is not the most common thing in the world over there. It does snow ever so often. Maybe, possibly, clothed or her household are all clothed with scarlet. Some have suggested, maybe they're all dressed in red, so if they get lost in the snow, they'll be easy to see. I really don't know. She makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. Why is he known? Because of his wife. Not because of things he's done, but because of what his wife has done. Her reputation has got all the way, and the gates is where the judges would sit. The gates is where the foreigners would come in. And they've heard of his wife. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Her strength and dignity, verse 25, back to our notes. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She cares more for the display of her character than the outward display of her clothing. Strength, and dignity are her clothing. Because of that, that makes her one of the best dressed in the city. Strength, without strength of character, anyone falters under the pressures and disappointments of life. You got to be strong to stand up to what this world is throwing at you. Her first priority is not what she wears, not what's in her closet, but her strength, her dignity, comeliness, beauty, excellence that makes a person stand out above the rest. There is just something about her that attracts people. And it's because of these works that she's done, what she does for her household. But we're going to find out, and it's still a couple of verses, what really makes her this way. They are her clothing. This is a woman who wants to be admired for what she wears, strength and dignity, not for the clothing that covers her body. These are two noble attributes for what a man should be looking for. Young men, strength, dignity. Is that part of the woman that you are in love with? That you want to spend the rest of your life with? Young ladies, is this characteristic of you? Or whenever the slightest bit of pressure comes, you fold? Strength, dignity. She smiles. She has a wonderful, joyous perspective on life. No matter what is thrown at her, she's smiling. She seems to be the kind that doesn't take herself too seriously. Even when adversity comes, she is able to smile. Instead of feeling or worrying, fretting about potential trouble, she smiles. And what does she smile at? She's smiling at the future. How many of us, our parents, my parents didn't, my grandparents did, they canned food. They slaughtered their own animals. They prepared for the winter. They prepared for the worst. My grandfather, he could, shoot them, skin them, cook them. He was good at that. He knew what to cut and what not to cut. The woman thinks ahead for her family. She looks at the future as an opportunity to be enjoyed. That's how she can smile. It is a challenge to be prepared for. It's not a challenge to be dreaded. Oh, what does tomorrow hold? No. Tomorrow holds new promises, new challenges. She has strength, she has dignity, and she has a smile on her face. Verse 26. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue, intellect and spiritual depth. That is what part of also that she's made of. She, the wife, opens her mouth. What is important is what comes out of her mouth. Wisdom and kindness. When she speaks, she is earnest and she speaks free. This is deliberate speech whenever she opens her mouth. In wisdom. She teaches her children and most likely her whole household, all these young women servants. Ethical behavior, religious instruction, not just knowledge, but how to put that knowledge in action. Practical application of what you know. She teaches, especially probably her daughters, if she has daughters, how to evaluate land, how to manage the household, how to have the household prepared. And as we've seen in this, it's not a 2 hour a day job. This is a 24/7 job. How does she teach them? Well, in this case, by her words. She's verbalizing her teaching, but her actions also are part of that teaching. Her kindness, one of the most used words in the Old Testament. This is a reference to God's loyalty, God's faithfulness, His covenant love, and His loving kindness. These are godly characteristics that are taught by her. She embraces these. People can see these. In this sense, she modeled the Lord before others. Part of her instruction to the household may have been to be loyal and attentive to others just as God is. And it's on her tongue, spontaneous speech. This is not some pre-planned lesson. Whenever she sees any opportunity to bring this forth, to teach this to her children, to teach this from her mouth, she gives it out. Women need to be different from men. Men explode from the mouth. That's part of our problem, a big part of our problem. Women, kindness, wisdom coming from their mouths. Verse 27, she looks well to the ways of her household, does not eat the bread of idleness. She is a faithful guardian. Faithful guardian. She is observant. She is always vigilant. Night, day, 24/7. She looks well. She is industrious. She not only looks at the immediate surroundings, but she takes the long view. Remember, she's smiling at the future to see what is in the best interest of her family. And by that example, her daughters are learning what they need to be doing. Her sons are learning, this is what I need to look for in a spouse. She looks well to the ways. As a woman, as a watchman, would look for any threat to the security and smooth operation of the city. So this woman looked for anything that might disrupt family life of her household. She is attentive to her family and indulgent in all she does. And probably not just her family. We're also talking about her servants also. She's looking out for them. She does not eat. This is figurative. She's not characterized by. She does not partake of. This industrious woman would have no part in indulging in the habits or miseries of a lazy person. She's working. She's getting it done. Idleness, laziness. This does not mean that she is so obsessed with work that she doesn't take time to rest or relax. The word means deliberate laziness. I know I've got 15 things to do, so I'll go take a nap. I got 20 things to do, well, I got a TV show I want to watch. I got all this stuff to do, well, I'll just goof on the internet for a little while. Then I'll do it. No, she takes care of her business first. When the business is taken care of, she takes time to relax. She realizes she has wisdom, and wisdom will tell you, you've got to take time to recharge. She does not indulge in laziness. This characteristic would be completely alien to what this poem is saying. Verse 28. Now this is an exhortation to her children, exhortation to her husband, and they all better be paying attention. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband also, and he praises her, saying, her children, her husband, the good wife's action should not go unnoticed, especially by those closest to her. A woman of such character and wisdom rightfully receives the blessing and praises of her families and blesses her. This is an indication of her divine favor, and they better do it. This is not your choice. This is a command. Bless her. Praise her. They don't do it unless they're taught by their father, their example of their father. If the father's not doing it, why would we expect the children to do it? Don't let the children mock their mother. Don't let their children be mean to their mother. Bless her. praise her. Her husband also. Not he should. He better do it. He is required to do it. He praises her. He boasts about her. He raves about her. He celebrates her. Verse 29. Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. When was the last time we husbands really paid a compliment to our wives? Men need to shape up. We need to encourage. We need to reward. We need to nourish our wives. Many daughters, many women. This can only be one household in one sense. However, you excel them all. Well, every man should be telling his wife, you're better than the rest. How? I mean, it's only by God's mercy, God's compassion, that I was given a woman like you, that I was allowed to share my life with someone as wonderful as you. Have done nobly. All the women who fit the pattern taught in this chapter. You, my wife, excel, rise above, superior to, surpass them all. All the women who embody the teaching of this poem, their husbands better be telling them, man, you have done so greatly. I just don't know why I deserve you. Like I said, it must be God's mercy. The only reason why. Verse 30, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord shall be praised. There's the key right there. Fears the Lord. Charm, favor, surface appearance covering up the inner person. Often it gives a false representation of the person. Deceitful. This false representation is deceitful. It does not reveal what the person is at their heart. A charming person may be good at acting charming, but on the inside they're kind of rotten. Beauty, one's physical attractiveness. Now, physical appearance is not necessarily dismissed. This is not saying, oh, you see a beautiful woman, turn away from them. No. But physical beauty, charm, it does not endure as these qualities. Our physical beauty fades. Some of us never really had it. But if you have it, it's going to fade. Despite everything you try to do, it will fade. Your charm will eventually, you'll have enough of play acting and act like your real self. The only thing that endures is the fear of the Lord, the reverence of the Lord. Beauty is vain. It is a breath. It is a vapor. Something that is very temporary. However, I will say this. If you truly love your wife, she is the most beautiful person in the world. There will never be anyone more beautiful than she is. Whether it's on the day that you wed her, the day that you celebrate your 50th anniversary, or the day when one of you draws your final breath. There's no one more beautiful than my wife. Never will be. And I thank God for her. Seek first a woman who fears the Lord. This is what he's saying here. That's the number one attribute. Because if they don't fear the Lord, the rest of this stuff is not going to fall into place. Feareth the Lord. Fears the Lord. This is the difference. This is the source of her virtue. She was worthy of the praise of her children and her husband because of her devotion, her reverence, and her worship of the Lord. You're kind of looking for a Mary and Martha. You want to Mary because of the service she did. I'm sorry, a Martha because of the service she did. Martha was diligent in her work, the sisters of Lazarus. But you also want to Mary. Mary had the fear of the Lord, the reverence, wanting the teaching. Each one of them symbolized something great. You put them together and you got the Proverbs 31 woman. Because she does both. She shall be praised. She shall be boasted in. She shall be raved about. And verse 31, give her the product of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. What she sells at the gates, what she makes in her garden, the clothes that she gives away, what she does for her household, that's all the product of her hands. The children that she trains, the children that she builds up. This is all of her hands, the good work that she has faithfully performed. Let her works praise her in the gates. And it's the husband that goes to the gates, spends the times with the boys. And what should you be doing? You should be praising your wife, talking about how great she is, what she has done for you and your family. Not, what a lousy woman, guess what she did? She won't leave me. No. Praise her for what she has done. Praise her for all the good works that she has done. My wife has just got finished. She has just finished her master's degree. She has worked hard these past years. And I mean, Facebook, whatever, whenever I meet people, talk about it. Let them know, look at what she did. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, and we thank you for your many blessings. Lord, we just thank you for all the mothers, the young ladies out there. We thank you for our grandmothers, great-grandmothers. We just thank you and praise you for the lessons we've learned. I pray for our young women that they learn from this Proverbs 31 what their lives should be like. I pray for the young men that they will seek out a woman like this, a woman who fears the Lord. We just thank you and praise you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, that's it for this morning. I hope you've enjoyed it. A happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And in 2 weeks, we'll be back finishing up Colossians. And in 2 weeks after that, we'll start our survey of the New Testament. Until then, may God bless. We will talk to you soon.